But Jefferson, to get into our conversation here, this is an interview that I really look forward to doing, as I told you in a couple of, our texts back and forth, because you were a guy that I was aware of when you were very young, and I swam at Eastern Michigan, not very well, but I did it. And I remember one day after practice or something, a club team that trained at Eastern Michigan, and we practice from 3 to 5:30 every day. So, anybody that might listen to this should understand that this is already 5:30 and this club team's coming into practice. And somebody pointed out, that kid right there, he's really good. And I was like really good? And yeah, he's really good. And that was my first awareness of this guy named Jefferson Moors that was swimming in the Ypsilanti area. And he was about 10, 11 years old at that time. And that's how I got to become aware of you. And of course, coaching Ypsilanti High School a few years later, I got to watch you come through at Brother Rice High School and win a number of championships that we'll talk about here. But this is an interview that I was really looking forward to doing. So thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it.
Dude, I'm flattered that you would call. Yeah, thank you.
Get out of here. You earned this call. So I want to start with you, if I can, kind of where I've started each of these interviews, and I've had the chance to, I'll go over 50 interviews in this series this week, and I've started every interview the exact same from the starting point. Tell me how you got involved in the sport of swimming.
Yeah, so I went to a daycare program. It was one of my mom's friends, and there was a kid in the program. His name was Eric Zeck. And he was maybe 2 years older than me. And it was just one of those things where, you look up to somebody and everything that he did, I wanted to do. And, nobody in my family had been involved in swimming in any way. But he was swimming for the Ypsilanti Otters, which was this great youth program. They would teach you how to swim from nothing. I think I don't know, like 3, 4 years old. And because he did it, I wanted to do it. And just as a slight tangent, the Ypsilanti Otters, there are so many swimmers who came out of that program who ended up being finalists at state meet or whatever, or swam in college. I mean, it's incredible what they did. And they were such, they made it fun and really nice people on the coaches and everything. So you're probably aware of them because you've done it at Ypsi.
Sure. Bonnie Dorbas was involved in that program. And from the time that I got involved, I've become good friends through the years with Brady Hahn, who was involved in that club at one time and went on his time at Huron. And he was friends with Jeff Dorbas. And from the time that I got involved in Ypsilanti's swimming, everybody made me aware that kid, Jeff Dorbas, is incredibly talented. He really put it together right at the end of his career, but I was aware that there were a number of really good swimmers that had come through Ypsi at that time.
Yeah, he was there. He was really good. I mean, Chris Carver, Ryan Wyatt, Nick Sensi, Elizabeth Postfar, so many kids. And I don't know, I just have really good memories from that. It was really nice. They taught me how to swim.
And Chris Carver was a kid that I got a chance to work with, I think, around his junior year, because I worked at Chippewa one of the summers, and Chris Carver swam, I think, the 96 summer at Chippewa. But anyway, we could go down a wormhole with all the connections, mutual connections at that time and around the Ypsilanti area. But that's how you got started, So how long did you swim with the Otters before you decided to take a next step?
I think I was there until around maybe 8 or 9. I can't, at some point, my dad was like, well, it seems like he's got some amount of talent for the sport. And so maybe we'll try to go to a club where they practice more often, or I can't remember what the logic was. But then I started swimming for this guy, Bob Nepper. He was the head coach at Marlin Aquatic of Dearborn. And he was a big, he's the kind of guy that you'd want involved with youth sports. He was really nice. It was not about him. He was just and he coached all those people. A bunch of people from the Otters ended up swimming for him, and it became we started it. I didn't do any of this, but the parents, I guess, decided to start a new swimming club, and it was called Marlin Aquatic in Michigan. And a bunch of kids started swimming for Bob Nepper at MAM.
And this is the club, of course, that was training in Eastern Michigan, and that was the club that,
yes.
that I became aware of you swimming for at that time. And I love how you kind of underplay it at that time, but just in my research on you very quickly, I mean, you know, every swimmer that I've spoken to has a story. Some kids arrive as national level swimmers, as seniors in high school, and they fight their entire career to arrive at that point. And some swimmers have much different experiences where they're kind of arriving on a state and national scene much younger, and that was the case with you. You were a champion swimmer very quickly, and you were a nationally recognized age group top 16 type swimmer at 10 years old. You were already establishing yourself, and you were swimming out of state. You know, I found you, you know, in some results where you were getting out of the state and broadening your horizons. I'm sure, knowing your dad the little bit that I do, that he probably encouraged that in helping you broaden your horizons and let you see kind of what was out there for you. I'm kind of interested in, you know, tell me about how that early success came to you and how you adjusted to it and embraced it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just one of those things where you get lucky, you know, like you start something, and there just happens to be, you know, a place where you know, you have an outlet for it, and you find out that you have, like, you know, something resembling a talent. And I don't know, I remember when I was 8, I started, you know, the club records and all that stuff, and honestly, man, I was just having a good time. like, I was just having a good time swimming with my friends, and you know, all that stuff started happening, and I broke some records, and that was really nice. And then the really cool thing about swimming, when I look back on it as a kid, is you mentioned the out-of-state stuff, and my dad and my mom were really supportive of that, and like tried to, you know, we would make it like family vacations, you know, like my dad's family was from Pennsylvania. And so he would want, you know, we would go to Pennsylvania to have a vacation, and then he would find some meet, you know, like in Pittsburgh or something. And then he would enter me, and I would meet all these kids, you know, from Pennsylvania. I think he did the same thing in Florida. You know, we wanted to take a family vacation, and so he would just coordinate it with whatever, you know, meet happened to be available. And so I met all these kids from around the country. And it was, I mean, there are so many things about swimming. Like, even when I got older, they would have cutoff times that you could make. And I started getting interested. Like, if I made this time, they would pay for me to go swim in Atlanta for a week. You know, they would like pay for the hotel, pay for everything. And I got to meet all these kids, you know, like when I look back on it, that was really the best part of the whole experience, was just, and I can't even tell you like how many people, you know, that came out of that Ypsi program who just, like, you know, they went on to college and, you know, became interesting people. I'm still, like, you know, connected with them in some way. And you mentioned the Eastern program, like all those guys were awesome. You know, like I remember so many people like Saul Delage and Noah Moran.
Okay, so now you're really getting, so I was the best man in Saul's wedding, and he was the best man in my wedding. So we're really mixing the streams here. For anybody who doesn't know, Saul Delage was the 1990 Class B State Swimmer of the Year, went on and swam at Eastern Michigan, and was your dad Tom's like law clerk or whatever they called him. He was like his lackey for a summer and did that. So anyway, back to your story about how great all the Eastern Michigan guys were.
Yeah, there's another guy. I just heard the nicknames. They called him Squirrel. There's a guy they called Squirrel, and he got really involved in coaching. There's so many, you know, I can't even begin to like remember all the guys. And there were so many coaches around that Ypsi and Arbor area, like Denny Hill and Sean Cornelia. You know, just really genuinely good people who cared about the kids and made it fun for all of us.
That's great. That's great. Well, you're so unassuming, and I love it, but I want to try and get you to, you know, maybe get into a little of that success with me. You know, you remember any of the specific kind of breakthroughs or wins, or maybe a cut that you made? Like, what really stands out when you think about maybe the young times, like 10, 12 and unders? Was there something where you kind of broke through and thought, wow, this is a big deal?
There were a couple of breakthroughs, like
Tell me about those.
well, again, like as a kid, I mean, I'm 10, like I'm just, having a good time swimming. And then I remember my dad, he like found this record, I guess. Like there was a record that had stood since like 1973 or something. It was a 200 freestyle record for 10 and under boys. And it was 203, like, something or other. I can't remember what exactly. And the guy's name, I think his name was Terry Fall, I want to say. And so, I remember they're like, well, if you can break that, that stood for like, what year was that? It must have been like, would have been 92,
Yeah.
So we went to, I think it was a meet in Wisconsin. Again, all these great swimmers. And I broke that record, and that was like, a big deal. At the time, it felt like a big deal. I mean, it's just age group swimming. But, and then the other thing I remember is, so after I was 10, you go into adolescence, and like all of a sudden, like, girls are bigger than you, and like everybody is growing. And I remember like I was kind of a late bloomer, like ironically, despite the fact that I had a little bit of, when I was 10, I did well. But then I remember everybody kind of caught up to me and kind of passed me. And I was like, oh man, I didn't know if I would ever like, start winning my races again instead of getting like fourth or fifth. But I mean, I was still having a great time. But then I remember when I was 14, when I went into Brother Rice, I remember this specifically. I was the smallest guy on the team from like a height and weight perspective, smallest guy. And I wasn't, I think people knew my name because I had done well when I was like 10 or 11, but I wasn't really that fast. And for like when I was 14, and then I remember when I was, I think late freshman year or the summer after my freshman year, all of a sudden I hit this growth spurt and I grew like 7 inches. It was almost like, somebody had come down and, decided to do me a favor. And then the next year, that's when I really like, my times dropped by like, I dropped like 20 seconds or something in the 500 free. And that's when that was like another breakthrough.
It's amazing, Jefferson. I mean, you and I have this similar parallel that we also grew like 7, 8 inches between our freshman and sophomore years. The difference is I didn't win the state championship in the 500 freestyle my sophomore year, and you did. So we'll get to that here in a second. But I want to back up on the Brother Rice thing a little bit, because this is a topic I wanted to get into with you. So tell me about that decision. I mean, you could have obviously done a lot of things with your high school experience and where you lived, and you had moved around and swum for different coaches. So tell me about how you and mom and dad kind of figured out that Brother Rice was going to be the destination.
So my dad had grown up in, all over the country because he was a military brat, but that's the term he uses. But so he moved to Bloomfield Hills when he was, I want to say like 14 or 15, and he went to Seaholm for high school. So did his little brother, my uncle. And then he went to East College and really liked the Ypsi Ann Arbor area, like found it very, compatible with who he is. And I had grown up as like an Ypsi Ann Arbor kid. And I think like I went to middle school. I had gone to Ypsi schools and then, a middle school in Ann Arbor. And we moved to Dexter. And that was just like, it was just really different. Like not saying anything bad about Dexter, but for whatever reason, it just didn't like gel, like I'd been a good student and then all of a sudden I wasn't doing so well. And I think he thought Brother Rice academically would be good. And my grandfather still lives like on Mosser Road, which is where Brother Rice is, is located. And so the deal was that I would like stay with my grandfather. And then I should also mention, of course, like Brother Rice had like an unbelievable team. Like they had all these guys. Yeah. Guys that like Carl Polowitz, Matt Parrish, Mario Scussel,
Nick Duda. I mean, this list
Nick
goes
Duda,
on, and you're right.
Unbelievable.
Right. We'll get into that.
Yeah, so all the guys that I had looked up to, but the bottom line is that he thought it would be, my dad thought, he knew about Brother Rice from when he was a kid. He thought it would be a good fit academically, and with the fact that the swimming team was like a powerhouse. So, I mean, I went in, as a 14-year-old, it was a huge change, because it's like culturally it's different from Ypsi and Arbor in a lot of ways. But after the adjustment period, like the teachers there were, it's a great academic school. And my sophomore year, they hired this guy. Ron Richards left, and they hired Mike Vinos, who is now like, he's pretty well established. But at that time, he was, just coming on the scene. And he and I got along really well. He was like, I don't want to call him a hippie, but, he's into like, maybe a little bit on that side of things. And that meshed well with my personality.
That's awesome. That's awesome stuff. So, I'll kind of skim over your freshman year here. You go 144, 146 in prelims, drop down to 144, and some really well in that consolation final. But you made the big final in the 500, went 442 in prelims, dipped down to 441 in the final. And as we'll get to here, this transition between your freshman to sophomore year, you go 430 to win the Class A title as a sophomore. You also won the 200 that day. And so you were one of the breakout stars, just honestly, and you're a humble guy. And I know you probably get a kick out of somebody talking about you like this, but hey, that day I was in the pool. I was the head coach at Ypsi, and I was there to see it. I knew this kid indirectly. You wouldn't have known me, but I knew this Jefferson Moors kid back when he was 10 years old. And here he is, 16 years old now, 15, 16 years old, and you doubled that day, won the 200 and 141, won the 500 and 430, and you were really good. Tell me about that day and kind of the first day that you were the best distance swimmer in the state of Michigan established.
Yeah, well, it's really nice of you to ask about that. So now that you ask about it, the 200, that was probably like my favorite race, like ever. I mean, it was just, I was like, nobody expected me to win that race. So I had no pressure on me, I had this weird kicking style that I did where I would use like a 2-beat kick, and then I would switch to a 6-beat kick for the last 50. Because if I went with a 6-beat kick the whole way, I found that I got too tired. And people kept trying to get me to change my kick because they said it looked funny. Like my one leg would come way out of the air, and they're probably right. But I didn't know any better. That's just the way I swam. And I remember, I think going into finals in the 200, I was like a 4th or a 5th seed. I think I was on the outside lane. And oh, nice. Yeah. And so I think the guy in the middle was Urquhart, if I'm not mistaken. He was swimming for Pioneer.
Yep. So we can see Robert Urquhart here took it out very fast in about 49.6. And Ray Coverly, who is always a ball of energy and ready to go, is also out in 49. You out a little bit slower in 50 points. Take us there.
I had no speed at all at the time. And then Matt Kowalski, who is my teammate, he was inside of me too. And so I remember, like, I couldn't see anything. I was doing this, like, 2-beat kick. And then my strategy was that when I got to the last 50, I would switch to the 6-beat. And so I remember I was way behind. And then the last 50, I started doing my 6-beat. And it was like I kept looking over to see how I was doing. And I think I passed Kowalski, and then I passed Coverly. And all of a sudden I looked over and there's like nothing. It's just like, and I got this huge burst of adrenaline, and I was like, oh my God, I might be able to win this. And I started like just, going all out. And Urquhart, I think was in like lane 2 or something. I can't remember. I couldn't even see him. I had no idea that he was even there. And I just, got that burst of adrenaline. And when I looked up, I thought I had won. I had no idea that it was that close, but I guess it was like 1/100th of a second. And that was just it was just so much fun.
I think all your memories are exactly right there. And looking, you were the 4 seed, so you would have been out in 5, and Urquhart was the 3 seed. So you two were separated by 3 lanes. So I think your memory is right on.
Yeah, that was just and you look back on it, there have been so many 200 freestyles where the winning time was like much faster, but it was just I had no idea that I could win that, and so it was a lot of fun, and like I remember, God, I mean the 500 I guess is like is probably a more impressive time or whatever, but the 200 that was just a blast. It was really it was a very fun race.
There had been guys, obviously, that had been a little bit faster. The state record, I think, at this time is established down in the 4:27 range. So there had been guys that had been a little bit faster. But as you said, every once in a while you'll look at state meet results and there might be guys that, like 4:30, this was a very good time at that time. This slotted you as a sophomore in high school among the top 10 fastest guys that had ever come through the state of Michigan. Period, like as age group swimmers, and you were only a sophomore, it was a very good time. Tell me about that race.
I'm trying to remember, like, honestly, like I feel bad saying this, but those races, like the longer races at the time, there was just something with where my body was at. Like I was really tall and thin, and like I honestly, like that, I don't think I've ever enjoyed swimming more than I did when I was like however old I was then, like 16, because it felt easy, like it just felt like diving in, and I just enjoyed it so much. Like there's something about distance swimming that was almost like meditation, like you would just get in and like do your thing. And
this was a blowout, Jeff. Like you meditated for 500 yards, man. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I think Ray Coverly and like Randy Lamb is no joke. Right? Randy Lamb is here to, to bring it. And just the fact of the matter is you swam away from those guys that day and won that race by 5.5 seconds. I mean, it was a great swim.
Dude, like, honestly, all I remember is I know this sounds so corny and it doesn't sound competitive or whatever, but the whole thing was just very peaceful, like you get in and it's almost like this Zen thing where you just go into the zone and then it's over. That's the way distance swimming was for me then. Like it was just one of my favorite things to do because, when you're 15 or 16, you got all this other stuff going on in your life and like, pressure and girls and all this stuff. And, when you could get in the water, that's where you can just turn it all off. And for me, that's what swimming was. Like it was just something I did that I enjoyed. It was fun. And that was just a byproduct of that,
It is a lot of pressure. I think you having not just the combination of terrific talent, extremely supportive parents, great coaching, an incredible program that inspired kids. I mean, I was around the Brother Rice program. Kids swam out of themselves at the state meet. Am I wrong? I mean, like the Brother Rice swimming community at these state meets, a lot of energy. And if I can, take you back there, Jefferson, I'd love to hear you talk a little about the Brother Rice culture, because at these state meets, these were, I mean, it was testosterone tests. Ann Arbor Pioneer brought a ton of machismo, the Urquharts. These guys would stand behind blocks and scream at their opponents. I saw it. So there was a lot of energy at the state meet in the late 90s. And Brother Rice was part of that because they brought culture and energy. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, you brought up Pioneer, and that's really the right team to bring up because I remember, like, I think, who said it? I think Carl Polowitz said or something like, when you get in there, you can cut the tension like a knife, and Kurt Spencer, I remember him saying like the challenge is to turn that into positive energy. But you're right, the atmosphere in there, especially when they had the state meet at Eastern, there was something about that pool. All my best times were done at Eastern. That was like my home pool where I felt comfortable. Like they had those really high blocks, and they had a different gutter system. The pool was fast, so fast. You know, everybody knew that it was the best place to have state meet.
You're talking
And
for you about that 98 state meet in particular at your sophomore year, right?
yeah, well, every time they had it, any meet they had at Eastern, that was like the best, because Eastern was the best pool. There was something about the way that the stands were set up where like you just felt like people were right on top of you and you could feel the energy. And yeah, I remember Pioneer, like the parents had this like cheer they would do like in the stands, and the Brother Rice parents were equally involved. And it just felt like when you're 15 or 16 or whatever it was, like it feels like, oh my God, this is like really significant. But I think, you know, I felt that energy, and that was definitely a huge part of it. And the Brother Rice culture, there's no doubt that that was like a big reason for, you know, the success of a lot of the swimmers there, because swimming was prioritized, and it was this kind of little cult where you would, you know, academics were as important as the swimming, if not probably more. And people really prided themselves, oh, I've got this GPA or that GPA. But I mean, there's no question that, you know, Brother Rice brought a ton of energy and culture, and Ann Arbor brought a ton of energy, and there's this huge rivalry. And at the time, Brother Rice was like, I mean, you know, they were winning by quite a bit before I got there. You know, I think they like won by a ton like the year before I even showed up. And then my senior year, that's when it got more competitive, because we didn't have, you know, Polowitz and Parrish and Scussel and Nick Duda. I'm leaving somebody. There was amazing swimmers at Brother Rice. But yeah, no, it was crazy. And I think I was naive, you know, I was just very like, there's definitely a part of me that was just having a good time when I was 15 or 16. And I think that probably helped my success, because I didn't.
In 99, you know, you went 15:45 in the mile, which was, you know, I was able to find that. And I got you national age group top 16 that year. So, you know, like obviously waiting to rest, and I've been maybe pushing everything back for a big meet, you were able to swim, you know, really well that year. So as you move into your senior year, a little more speed showed up, and you were dipped down to 140. I'm sure the perfectionist and everybody, you're probably mad that you didn't go 139 when you went I think you were like 140.09 your senior year at the state meet, which was your best high school time. And that won you your second 200 freestyle state title. I bet that was cool for you. If the 200 your sophomore year was your favorite race of your whole career, it had to be cool to be able to grab that one on your way out the door to start the state meet your
Oh
senior year.
yeah, senior year was great, because for the first time, oh God, no, we lost the state meet my junior year, and so I felt like, oh, you know, I felt guilty, you know, like, you know, I didn't know whether my waffling between high school and club had, like, you know, been a part of that. And so my senior year, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to do high school. And I tried to like get faster, because you know, my background was in distance swimming, and I wanted to like, you know, be able to do more things. And senior year was great, because I think we won the title by like not very much, you know, it was close, the team title. And that was like, you know, that was just fun, because nobody was taking it for granted that we were going to win that year. So we had a great time, you know, and then we were able to pull out state meet and all that. And yeah, the 200 was definitely, it was fun. It was a good time.
You doubled in or tripled in the 500, and that of course puts you in a unique class. And when you're a guy like me that's trying to be a historian, and you're creating these levels of like, how do you separate people? I think one of the cool things in your bio is a three-peat in the 500 freestyle. That's really difficult. Not a lot of guys accomplish that. And you got to be your senior year the only time that you appear on a state championship Brother Rice relay. And they put you out front, right? You lead this thing off, the 400 free relay, or were you, I saw you in the results first, but were you in fact first on that relay? Do you remember it?
Yes, yeah, no, they led me off in the 200 medley relay, which was that was the first one. I did backstroke, and then the 4x100 relay.
Win, right? That was your lone relay win. Is that right?
Honestly, Mark, I can't remember. I can't remember. I
Gotta
can't
make sure.
remember.
Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you there. I'm trying to make sure all my facts are right too as I'm going through these stories with you. So as I write about it, but go ahead. I shouldn't
No,
interrupt
you're
you. So you're
fine.
out front in the 400 free relay here.
Yeah. So I remember it was the 400 free relay, and it was like, if we win the state meet, you know. And I remember people have got videos of it, you know, where you can hear the stands and like people going nuts and all that stuff. I haven't seen them in years, but and yeah, I went first, and Matt Bowman was the anchor. I think Josh Davidson was on the relay. I can't remember who the third person, Chris Breedy. And so then I remember yeah, I think I got us the lead, if I'm remembering correctly. And then we won that relay, and everyone, you know, just started going nuts and all that. And it was awesome.
Hey, the one other thing I wanted to ask you that I found in my research is, you know, everything that I find, you're a freestyler, right? And then I find this 50.52 100 backstroke in 2000 for Ole. They got you a national top 16 listing. I thought that was really cool, you know, for a guy that really made his name in high school swimming in the state. And I know that you were a talented guy in other events, but a lot of people looking back wouldn't, you know, be able to find a lot of stuff because you were exclusively used as a kind of middle distance to distance freestyler, but you did pop that 50.500 back your senior year.
Yeah, it's nice of you to mention that. So that's what I was trying to do, you know, was, you know, trying to branch out a little bit. And I think the week after high school state meet, we did Michigan state meet, and I made trials in the 400 IM, which at the time was like, I didn't even really, like, I had no idea I could swim that event. And so that's what I was.
Tell me about the decision to go to Brown.
So for me, it was like, if swimming ended, you know, if I got hurt, had some kind of like catastrophic injury, and I just was choosing a school, where would I go? You know, and at the time they had this guy, Matt Kredich, who was coaching Brown, who has moved on to the University of Tennessee. And so he's had all this success now, you know, like top, you know, at NCs. And a lot of people don't think of Brown as like a swimming school. But at the time, he was the coach, and he recruited me, and he has had a crazy career, you know, very successful at like a national level. And Brown at the time, I felt like there was something about him. He was a talented coach, you know, maybe a little bit under the radar. And so he was a great guy, you know, very good recruiter. And two, I was like, man, I mean, if we can swing it financially, like, you know, Brown would be like my dream school, you know? So, and then also there was a club team in Providence called the Ocean State Squids. And that's where Eric Vent swam at the time. And he was like a big national distance swimmer. And so I was, you know, much better than I ever was. And so I was like, well, I've met with the Squids coach, and we talked about coordinating, and I figured, well, you know, I can swim well here. You know, it was between that and going to like a state school, you know, like University of Texas or University of Michigan. And I just felt like Brown intellectually and academically was just an opportunity I couldn't turn down. And the team there was great people, fantastic people, some of the best times of my life.
It's awesome. When you look back, kind of big picture, Jefferson, if I asked you if there was something like, you know, if you were writing your own resume, and I can already tell you're too humble to do that, but what are you most proud of in the swimming pool?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm trying to think.
Do you think it came in high school or college?
Well, you like, you know, the winning is like, you know, people always talk about winning, and that's great. What I found is like when we listen to like Max Scherzer or something talking about pitching, like he's always talking about the process, you know, like he doesn't get caught up in results. So I feel bad saying this, but I won the state title when I was in high school, and I won the Ivy League title when I was in college. And so, you know, it's nice to have that. it feels good too. Especially when I was in college, I kept losing. Like I kept getting second or third, like my freshman, sophomore, junior year, and then my senior year, I won the 200 free, the conference title, and that was just like a nice way to leave the sport, to go out and bid farewell. But
That's
my favorite thing.
That's an incredible way to leave the sport, to win the Ivy League title as a senior after pursuing it your whole career. I'd say that's a nice walk-off.
Yeah. My favorite thing about swimming, bar none, though, is like the people that you meet in the sport. It's crazy. Like, I cannot tell you how many interesting people I've met. And like, they go on and they do these things, especially like, Brother Rice and the Otters and all those things. Like, you just meet so many people. And like for a kid from Ypsi, to travel around the country and like, get to go to a good, high school and a good college, that just meant everything. The sport was so good to me, and just a lot of positive memories.
Are there any other great influences that maybe we just somehow by questions skirted around, like in terms of coaching influences? You touched on Jeff and the coach at MAM that kind of helped you with that transition to take the next step. We even touched on Bonnie Dornbos and the Ypsi Otters. Was there anybody else that kind of was important in your development?
There's like too many to mention, like I swam for so many different teams, and like, it's just Rich Zeus was a great guy. My dad, despite not having any swimming background at all, he was so like into it and very supportive, and was definitely like a big part of the picture. But I mean, man, there's too many people. Like I couldn't even begin to, I'm sure I'm leaving like so many people out, but
for sure.
Yeah, so many people who are good to me,
Yeah. So to finish up, you kind of followed your dad's steps, right? Do I see that you're now an attorney at law and kind of doing that thing as well?
Yes. Yeah. I'm practicing law in Charlotte, North Carolina. So
that's awesome. I'm sure he's proud. Who's the better attorney?
Well, we have different skill sets, Like I think growing up, my dad's like what you call a real lawyer, like he had his own practice, so a lot of people, they come out of law school and they go to work for a big firm and they're kind of a cog in a machine, and my dad tried, how many cases, like he was like a real courtroom lawyer, so I call him all the time for advice. And, my practice is a little bit different. I do a lot of like, I'm definitely in the courtroom, but there's also a big research and writing component, but he's just, he's always like a good resource. And he's a fantastic guy.
Did you ever have any nicknames?
Yeah. So my nickname in college was Moops. Cause if you like Seinfeld, there's an episode with Bubble Boy and there's like a trivia card and the answer is supposed to be Moors. And there's a misprint on the card. And then George Costanza is like, won't give him credit for the answer because it says Moops. And so everybody in college called me Moops.
What'd you peak at in height in your swimming career? Were you around like 6'4"-ish in that range? So where were you?
Yeah. So I think I was 6'5" by the time I left college.
Great. But you're wiry, like, as I'm writing this, I'd like to be descriptive. What would you guess you weighed your sophomore year when you pulled off that double?
Maybe like 140.
Would it be accurate to describe you at probably like 6'3", 6'4", 140 at that time?
Something like that. Yeah. Maybe 6'1", 6'2", 140.
I distinctly remember standing on the deck and you walked in front of me that day right as you were meeting your coaches on the deck and you were bald and everything. And my image of you that day was like, this guy's he's going to go faster because you were doing it without a lot of muscle at that time, for sure.
Yeah, no muscle. They used to make fun of me so much. They try to give me the donuts and like all this stuff. And what's ironic is like you've seen the whole thing with like Michael Phelps, where he eats, however many like I was eating nonstop and I could not put on weight. That's what it's like when you're an adolescent.
Yeah. My last question for you, I guess I'm curious, do you still swim at all? And more big picture, I would love to kind of hear you, and you touched on this a little bit. You talked about tranquility, like how you love to kind of like, your peace in the water. And I've only heard a couple of people talk like that. Ian Mole in my conversations was very much that way and talked about just his relationship with the water, and the way you spoke about like that 500 free when you went 430 and going to another place and that tranquility. I'd love to kind of hear you talk about your relationship with the water then, today, and just in general.
Well, that's what swimming was all about for me personally. Was like it was like a safe place where you could go, and I mean, no matter what was going on in your life, you could go there, and it was incredibly peaceful. And to this day, I love water. It sounds like cliche, but there is something, I don't know if it was like, it's something back in my ancestry or something. I feel like there's something primal there. I love being on boats. I love being near water. I love looking at water. I love everything about it. And I still swim occasionally. I'm actually trying to swim more now, because I realize it has so many benefits for me. But I don't get in as much as I should, but I'm always resolving to get in more. And there is something about it that is just incredibly meditative. And that's what I think I'll remember most about the sport.